The NBA will return to play tomorrow after players and owners reached an agreement to push social justice measures. One of those vows to turn the league's arenas. Hello, hey, hi, social media family. Being of whatsoever races, but then not really being of whatever walks of life, factions of society, or lifestyle preferences. I mean, you have got to recognize and or realize that not anybody and everybody can or could possibly be considered as being someone's social media family. I mean, you know how that is. I mean, it all spells out as just trying to, reason with good common sense. People's places and things, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, in the wrong crowd. Been there, done that, don't want to do it again anytime too soon again. Hopefully, it will be a long time in coming if and when, or better yet to be said, if at all, that were to ever happen again. And the life you save may be your own. Get a clue. Okay? So I say to you all, that is whosoever can or could possibly legitimately be considered as being a part of my social media family, regardless of race, but then not necessarily regardless of walk of life, faction of society, lifestyle preference, because it will all go back to what I was saying much earlier, and with I don't consider the LGBT community to be a part of my social media family for the simple reason being that it conflicts with my own religious beliefs of faith. I mean, don't get me wrong. A person who is a member of that particular community with its alternative lifestyle preferences can or could possibly pay a visit to my own social media chat room, provided that you don't come off like an internet troll in the negative, all the while knowing that my person can or could possibly become subjected to experiencing, enough, more than enough, my own demons. However said, you guys speaking correct, proper standard English grammar or not. But speaking the King's English or street slang for that matter. Bottom line is I can, as I have said, so I don't necessarily need to become subject to it, being experiencing the influences of somebody else's demons in the negative, being of whom could possibly remind me of a proverbial neighbor from hell, of a rather obnoxious, ignorant, insane, and an impolite, public nuisance of a problem neighbor who would not only be needing some of such general professional mental health services, but then likewise some of such prayers, and especially if he himself is attempting to push the envelope by attempting to bother with another neighbor's apartment door, whereas that is not only socially unacceptable, but then nevertheless it is equally as well criminally illegal. Okay, being a which would justify and or warrant a police arrest and for one to be subpoenaed to appear within a courtroom setting before a judge, jury, and prosecutor if caught committing a hate crime of a nature to be possibly considered as both being a civil and a human rights violation offense against another individual person, be one an American citizen or a foreign immigrant, for that matter, that has taken up residence within the continental United States of America, USA, to simply say, for our own supposed so-called democratic republic or democracy as we have it here, for that being the Western Hemisphere within the global community. So I say to you all, being of my social media family, being of whom are in addition of the old young alike, both of the two sexual genders of males and females representing not only the human species, but then nevertheless the global community within this post 911 era of a new millennium of this apocalyptic day and age, and where the doomsday clock is now at a couple few minutes to midnight compared on to how formerly produced or prior to then was at a quarter midnight for rather biblically prophetic times. I'm sorry, don't get distracted by the compulsive hand gestures, but then it has been rather hot and humid in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. But then, nevertheless, getting back to what I was about to say, or as I try to think of it with my attention to do so now, and as a backtrack here with reason or purpose of being, so I can go on to following where and when that my person had last left off, so that I could possibly finish up as a complete or formal previous prayer line with all the saints. Since the word so far is concerning the basic intro as an introduction before I were to get to speaking upon any subject matter of an issue at hand, pardon the pun, none was intended, none had been meant, and no offense is meant to be directed against any past, present, or future sexual assault victims or rape victims for the last mention, especially if they were to be of the many different races of women and children, or to rephrase that for that some assist. Give them on time. Yes, and so I'm trying to complete this here basic intro before I were to speak about any some such of a given argument to be possibly considered with the many different views and opinions to be associated with some or such thereof for a topic of discussion to be debated, be it of controversy or not, or be it of something of a plague upon any given society within the global community that has yet to be resolved, if it has not been already. For this post 911 era of a new millennium of these rather biblically prophetic times, some are such to be considered during the course of conversations of dialogue. But then, whatever I could speak upon, be it one thing or another in one regard and or another. But then, don't kill the messenger. I'm just here to deliver, and hopefully, with that much less of a chance to be mouthing off quite a bit of some and such other vice versa, as in with that much less of the opportunity or chance to simply say to employ the usages of abuse or profanity, much rather than to possibly use that much more cuss words, depending on how I feel as a present given moment in time, hopefully more for the greater glory, the higher power of whom I choose to recognize and realize for that in a person like myself, or for a person of my saints of being none other than our Lord and Savior, the Christ, Messiah, Deliverer, or God, as He had come in human flesh to give His life for any, every, and all upon the cross of Calvary, at the hands of Roman soldiers upon the orders of their superiors, religious, political, and otherwise, but so they can from there give any, every, and all the opportunity to become saved by the blood of the Lamb, God, to take away the sins of the world, being as He Himself is, so that we would have that insurance for the afterlife or hereafter once we were to cross on over, make that transition opposite this existence as we know it, whereas it would be bad enough to go through any hell in this world, any damn hell, then have to become subject to experiencing the real hell, real damn hell elsewhere. So I say to you all, but before I would lose my train of thought, so to speak, in this song. So I say to you all, yes, I have, and I have yet to remember. And if I have, well, all things are supposed to work for the good of God. But anyway, something about, let me see now. Yeah. What was I? Oh, yes. I was saying, but then hopefully, if I do speak upon any subject matter at hand, hopefully it will be with less useless, offensive, much rather than instead of with that much more cuss words. And therefore, likewise, as well, all the same, let it be said, be I speaking correct, proper standard English grammar of the American dialect or not, being of some such quality and quantities. But then the bottom line is, yes, yeah, whether it be speaking the King's English or street slang for that matter. And hopefully, likewise, I would be less likely to sound off and or seem like, the lesser to you being a prodigal son, being a believing God, as in Christian, aka protesting that has strayed away from the will of God. you know, for that or something such to give them time. If I were to have done so, then hopefully I could come back in the fold after being that one sheep that has strayed from the 99. Okay. But then how are you all doing? Well, hopefully everyone is doing at least okay. If not better yet, to be said, to be feeling all right. If not best of all, to be said, to be feeling blessed and stressed. More blessed and stressed, or too blessed to possibly become or be stressed. You and yours, your family and friends, and me and mine, you know, for that is something such to give a moment of time, you know. And now that I've gotten the preliminaries, a basic intro as an introduction out the way, then let me get to speaking upon some subject matter. You know, like say, for example, and regardless of whether or not I can speak upon a couple of few for that matter as of this present time. Now, you notice the heading for this particular social media broadcast of mine, and as it is quite naturally regarding making reference to certain police officers who defy the proper procedures and policies and protocol and violate some of such other civil and or human rights, particularly and especially if they are of blacks, of American citizens and or foreigners alike. And that's wrong, you know. And so what I would suggest for any police department within the continental United States of America, that if there is a police officer that has something like a couple of few questionable infractions against the law that would be considered as civil and or human rights violation offenses against American citizens and or foreigners, then not only should that police officer be suspended, but that very same police officer that said in question in the previous prior mention should be fired altogether, you know, to avoid any further liabilities to not only the police department in question that one would be an employee there, but also to prevent one from violating the civil and human rights of others any further, being of which could possibly have serious repercussions. You understand what I'm saying? And then we wouldn't be having all these riots, you know, nationwide breaking out. Then because some stupid and sick police officer who's stuck on stupid is out here violating the civil and human rights of American citizens and our foreigners, and then get to assume that one is above the law. Nobody is above the law. Don't do the crime if you can't do the time, you know. Certain police officers that, you know, defy the proper policies and procedures of police protocol should be sent into the unemployment lines. But not only that, they should have to answer for the serious consequences for their actions, as in they themselves likewise, if the crime fits the punishment as well as the fine, then they should be incarcerated, you know, and sentenced with a jail term, you know, if not be given capital punishment depending on what state within the union that the civil and or human rights violation offense could possibly have happened within. You understand what I'm saying? We wouldn't be having all this civil unrest nationwide if the three strikes you out law could possibly be applied to police officers, the cops, you know, whereas, you know, their superiors should say, if you have three strikes against you of a serious civil and human rights violation offense against a person of American citizen and or foreigner, then your police career is over. You got to take a hike. You know, you're going down. You got to, you know, turn in your badge, your uniform, your revolver, and you have got to get into the unemployment line. Not to mention, possibly would have to appear before a judge, jury, and prosecutor. Then, because your police career is now over, and that would be great if it could be like established like that, you know, to get our nation's police forces emptied of dirty cops, and that would save a lot on the American taxpayers' budgets, okay? Because, it comes out of the wallets and purses of others to have to compensate or reimburse the victims of these dirty cops who misrepresent law-abiding police officers. You hear what I'm saying? So that's what each police department within the continental United States of America, be it for a city, suburb, or rural township, should consider, to avoid having to possibly waste the American taxpayers' money and then some, to possibly limit the chances of a big, a big payback otherwise, because a lot of this social unrest is the fallout of hate crimes being committed by dirty cops, You hear what I'm saying? I mean, if I myself was a superintendent of police of a major police department, that's what I would legislate to be established as the new rule, that if any police officer is caught having violated the civil and human rights of an American citizen and a foreigner 3 times, whereas it is questionable, highly questionable, that a civil and a human rights violation offense has been committed to the endangerment of not only an individual person otherwise, but likewise to the general public or the people at large, then that same police officer would have to take a hike. Like, get out of here. Clean out your locker. You're gone. Your police career is through. Finito. A done deal. History. Hit the door. You hear what I'm saying? It don't matter. Be the police officer white, black, or green, moon marshal from outer space in human form. To save the American taxpayers money, and likewise to save the many different businesses from being looted again. You hear what I'm saying? Because every time a dirty cop commits a hate crime against an individual person, being of which could possibly become or be lethal, the fallout from that is some of these not so peaceful protesters be moonlighting as looters, and then they get to destroying premises and properties of the many different real estate places of businesses, be it public or private, and that just further exacerbates the crisis of what's going on of social unrest within a major metropolitan city, suburb, or rural township for that matter. Because from there, not only does that affect, an annual yearly fiscal budget of a city, suburb, or rural township to have to pay out money to reimburse or compensate victims and family members of the victim here and there, but also different businesses have to be compensated or reimbursed for the destruction of its real estate premises and property, be it of a public or private facility, after looting were to occur as a result of developments of some dirty cop having committed a hate crime of a civil and a human rights violation offense against an individual person of an American citizen and a foreigner. And then there's also the cost of cleanup, being which would further affect the annual yearly budget of a major metropolitan city, suburb, and or rural township. So the dirty cop is not anybody's friend. You understand what I'm saying? The dirty cop is an enemy of a civilized society. The dirty cop is one who is much more of a liability to an annual fiscal budget of a city, suburb, or rural township than a person who could possibly wish to state one's grievances against a dirty cop violating the proper policies and or procedures of police protocol. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm sure that any politician who still possesses or have half one's marbles would agree with me. You know, get rid of the dirty cops, and we will save not only our cities, suburbs, and townships, but we will also save our country or nation. You know, I mean, after all, we're supposed to be the beacon light of democracy to the rest of the world. There are only so few democracies in the world compared to there being many more dictatorships. So, in order to preserve our American society, our democratic way of life, then we have to take a stand and get rid of the dirty cops through the proper policies and procedures of democratic process to put one out of commission, to annihilate that the possibility of just another dime a dozen dirty cop committing a hate crime against an individual person that could, cost us all. You understand what I'm saying? All in general. You hear what I'm saying? Our whole city suffers from a dirty cop committing a hate crime against an individual. Our whole city. Do you know that when looting happens after a dirty cop, looting as well as rioting happens after a dirty cop has violated the civil and human rights of an individual person, be one American citizen and or foreigner, be one American citizen or foreigner, that we all suffer. We all suffer, you hear? There's not a person that does not suffer from the negative civil and human rights violation offense actions of a lousy, dirty cop. And besides all that, when it comes to white police officers, I believe that more than half, as in most or the majority of them, are a bunch of closet Klan and closet Nazis, So there needs to be, a cleaning of house, Look into the what you call look into the records of each and every individual police officer cop, and whereas the superiors should start firing more than quite a few, for any questionable civil and human rights violation offenses that would more than likely, more often than not, legislate that particular police officer being sent into the unemployment lines, and furthermore possibly have to answer for one's indiscretion against an American citizen or a foreigner, as in be subpoenaed to appear within a courtroom setting of law before a judge, jury, and prosecutor for questionable and suspicious civil and human rights violation offenses. Now, if something of a nature is merely circumstantial, well, that's a different story. But if it seems to be more than evident that a police officer has defied the proper policies and or procedures of police protocol, then that very same police officer should be given a mandatory leave of absence, as in fired from a police department. That's how I look at it. And then I think that our whole nation would be much better off, whereas as there would be less dirty cops on our nation's police departments, then there would be less social unrest. Because a lot of this here is manufactured by communist insurgents who wish to destroy our own democratic republic or democracy. Yeah, I believe that to be the case. A lot of closet commies, or closet communists as well as closet socialists. You got to recognize and realize. I mean, these are the times we're living in. You hear what I'm saying? But then I think I'm just going to wrap things up, you all. Sorry I haven't been on here much longer than about half an hour lately. I mean, it's just been so extremely hot, humid, But I'll get back with y'all some other time. Hopefully, I'll be on here much longer next time we're to get on. It all depends. I mean, you have to take care of yourselves. Self-preservation is the first law of nature. I mean, if you don't take care of yourselves, how are you going to take care of anybody else? Look out for their general welfare. Be they relatives or friends of your families or complete strangers, where you could possibly try to think to play the part of the Good Samaritan with. Okay? And anyway, though, as I would usually speak upon some of such a subject matter, regardless whether or not I would speak upon a couple, few or four more for that matter at some given moment in time. But then, I mean, just as I would get an intro, I would speak upon a subject matter, a couple, few, four more, depending on how I feel at some given moment in time. Then, last but not least, I would give the conclusion of the matter. And by saying any more words or less. If you haven't gotten Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, I hope that you would think to do so now while the blood is still running warm in your veins, by recognizing and realizing what he himself had done or did upon the cross of Calvary on the hill of Golgotha, at the hands of some set of Roman soldiers up by the orders of their religious superiors, being of Pharisees and or Sadducees, but then nevertheless, whereas he had given his life upon the cross of Calvary to become the perfect sacrifice, the only sacrifice for you as well as for me, whereas he had permitted himself to suffer at the hands of the same Roman soldiers on the hill of Golgotha, on the cross of Calvary, between two thieves who were likewise crucified. And as the Roman soldiers were given orders by their superiors to do him in, but nevertheless, whereas he has sacrificed himself to become the perfect sacrifice, the only sacrifice, for you as well as for me. So if any of us, being of whom could possibly profess faith in them, being of whatsoever races, whatever walks of life, fashions of society, or lifestyle preferences, being of the old, young, alike, of both two sexual genders, of males and females, representing not only the human species, but the global community within this post-911 era of our new millennium, apocalyptic day and age, and where the doomsday clock is now at a couple few minutes to midnight, compared on how formerly or previously it was at a quarter midnight for these rather biblically prophetic time. Word to profess some of such faith in him. From there we become or be blessed in one regard or another, in more ways than one. First and foremost, with his salvation, which is the only means by which any of us can or could possibly hope to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Because all roads do not lead to heaven. All roads may lead to Rome in this world, but not in the next. Then second of all, where we will be blessed with that being of his deliverance. But first you have got to get his salvation before you can or could possibly become or be blessed in any regard. Otherwise, you have nothing coming so far as blessings is concerned. And if you should go out of this world without the blood sacrifice of our Lord and Savior Christ, the Messiah deliverer, then your final destination will be the lake of fire, damn hell. To be assembled with the rest of the unsaved human souls of unbelievers and unbelievers that did not spend quality time throughout their lives with God, to try to accept him as one's personal Lord and Savior, to get that insurance for their immortal human souls for the hereafter, the afterlife. And whereas when the books are open, you will hear the question of, is his or her name written in the book of life? And then that's what we know, and then you will be cast into the lake of fire to be with the rest of the unsaved unbelievers and unbelievers. Compared to how we as believers in God will be across a great divide that separates heaven from hell, and be beyond the pearly gates among like-minded believers in God, saints of the fellowship of Christians, aka Protestants, in the company of God and his angels otherwise. Because God cannot be mocked. What you sow is what you shall reap. If you don't accept Christ as your personal Lord and Savior, You will be among the other unsaved unbelievers and non-believers to be tortured and terrorized by the devil and his demons forever. You all take care and be blessed, not stressed. Peace and love, joy and happiness. And I'll holler at you later. Until then, my prayers go out for y'all. Hopefully some of you will think to pray for me if you are believers like I am. Peace.